All right, we have a lot of moving parts here as we speak. Jordan Schultz, Fox Sports NFL Insider. There's a lot of things going on. He's on Speak today. So let's address, first of all, there's a lot of teams out there. I kind of feel like Jets, Saints, Davante Adams, Derek, Aaron, what are the best landing spots? This is very fluid because, Jordan, as you know, leverage matters.
Yes.
The Raiders don't have to win now. Dennis Allen does and Rodgers-Saleh does. So they could be pounding the table here. What's the latest on Davante?
Well, let's get to those teams, but also why don't we start with maybe the teams that have been rumored, but I would say are more sleepers. Let's start with Buffalo. I think if you look at the Bills, in theory, that's a great fit, right? Because they don't really have a number one receiver. They have Dalton Kincaid. They have Khalil Shakir. They have some good young receivers, Keon Coleman. But I think Buffalo, like a Kansas City, would have to wait. The longer the wait, the less money you have to pay him now.
Right.
You know, Kansas City, for example, obviously will be in the wide receiver market, I think. But it would surprise me, not only for the interdivision trade, but it would surprise me if the Chiefs were able to take on that cap. But if you're able to wait, then the Raiders, to your point, Colin, about leverage, lose some leverage.
Right.
Because then all of a sudden
teams are out.
Yes. And now all of a sudden, okay, maybe I have to trade this guy. He's not happy. And let's just say hypothetically, if you're a really good team, maybe you're a Baltimore, a team that I think could absolutely be in on Davante Adams. Your first-round pick, if you're going to get feisty, is probably going to be in the high 20s, early 30s. That first-rounder is not necessarily the most valuable one. I think Baltimore, to that point, we saw in the playoffs against the Chiefs, Colin, they got away from their game script. They stopped running the football. Then they couldn't throw the football. They need, to me, another wide receiver opposite Zay Flowers. They have some really good talent there. You mentioned Derrick Henry. Obviously, we like Isaiah Likely. Mark Andrews is an all-pro, but he's getting older. Now you get Davante Adams. Now you have a guy who can legitimately take over a game. The Detroit Lions, they have $28 million in cap space.
Wow.
Do they need Davante Adams? No. Could they use him? Yes. You know, Sam Laporta, great young tight end. Jamison Williams can absolutely fly. We just saw Amon-Ra St. Brown get all pro.
But those guys Williams gets banged up.
And he's more of a perimeter guy. Amon-Ra's a slot guy. Now all of a sudden you add Davante Adams to Jared Goff, who's one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. That becomes that much more of a dynamic offense. I think there are a lot of question marks about the Jets and Saints, right? Because he wants to be with a quarterback he's played with. Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers. The Saints do not have the financial flexibility to get this done. It would be almost, to me, impossible for the Saints to get out and make a deal. But just because of the money. We know this team constantly pushes deals down the road. That, to me, tells me right now they would love to get him, but because of the way their contract and their cap is set up, it's going to be very unrealistic. The Jets, to me, make the most sense for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
This is an offense that is struggling right now. You mentioned Garrett Wilson, one of the best young receivers in the league, 9.3 yards per catch. This offense, Colin, 4 yards per play. It's one of the worst clips in the league.
With Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson in the Hall.
It doesn't make any sense. Why? Because their creativity right now is not there. Garrett Wilson, I was just talking with J-Mac. He's been criticizing
publicly.
He didn't say Nathaniel Hackett, but he said we need to be more creative. What happens if you get Davante Adams? Well, now you can be more creative. I look at the Jets and I say, this front office has so much pressure on it, not only with Joe Douglas, but the head coach and Rodgers-Saleh. If we can go out and get a Davante Adams, that frees up a lot for us, but also we don't really necessarily care about a future second-round pick. What do we care? If we don't win this year, we're gone anyway. So let's go ahead and empty the tank and get a Davante Adams. But to me, this is a fluid situation, and I don't necessarily know if anything's imminent, but I also think it's important to know, and I'll leave you with this, it's important to note that Davante Adams does not have a no-trade clause. He cannot engineer this the way that maybe a Brandon Ayuk could with San Francisco. We heard Washington, we heard Pittsburgh. Those are teams, by the way, that could be interested as well. I think the Commanders and Steelers make a lot of sense, but Davante Adams cannot orchestrate this the way that he wants. I think the Raiders will try to get him to a place he would like to go, but they don't have to say to be victim to his demands. And I'll leave you with Washington and Pittsburgh. The Steelers were in on Brandon Ayuk. The Commanders were in on Brandon Ayuk. Those are two teams, specifically Washington, that I look at and say, this is a long-term play.
Right.
The Jets are the short-term play.
Oh, yeah.
1 or 2 years with Aaron Rodgers. He's 40 years old. Jaden Daniels is the truth.
Yeah.
He is the future. We've seen how talented he is. They have a really good wide receiver in Terry McLaurin, as does Pittsburgh with George Pickens. Add Davante Adams, and suddenly those offenses, especially Washington, become that much more dynamic.
Okay, so June preseason and the cadence comments recently. 3 different times, Saleh is learning how to be head coach.
Right.
It's harder with an impulsive owner, Aaron Rodgers, Zach Wilson, New York. And not that he stumbled, but he said things, started fires, New York media responds or questions him, and then he's got to put him out.
Yeah.
So he's kind of learning on the job. But my take is Aaron seems almost annoyed having to answer the you're not playing in the preseason, unexcused absence, cadence. That's 3 different instances where Aaron's come up kind of in that eye roll, annoyed state. Do Aaron and Saleh, what is the relationship? Do they have one?
Aaron's safety valve, his comfort zone, his relationship is Nathaniel Hackett. That's his guy, for good, for better or worse. I think his relationship with Saleh is fine. It's tenable. But his comfort zone is Nathaniel Hackett. Now, Aaron has the power, as he should, but when I hear some of the things that Saleh is saying, I question whether or not he understands what he has. Aaron Rodgers is the greatest free play quarterback in the history of football.
Yeah, 18 touchdowns. His game.
That's his game. Now, sometimes you're going to have false starts. They had 3 false starts last week against Denver. They only had 1 the first 3 weeks. So there are going to be mistakes. They're trying to incorporate Olufushanu, a young offensive lineman. This is an offensive line in general that is still meshing. But this is Aaron Rodgers. Part of what makes him great, in fact, a lot of what makes him great, is the freedom at the line of scrimmage to adjust. 18 free play touchdowns is, again, the most ever. That's what happens with Lazard. It's what should happen with Garrett Wilson. And make no mistake, it's what would happen with Davante Adams.
Okay, you came out and reported earlier this week that Jacksonville, which there's a lot of speculation from Belichick to making a move now. You reported that Doug Pederson, the head coach, had lost the locker room. Well, he was fired in Philadelphia, and these are beyond hard times. They can't win games. So you tell me, is he in trouble? Could there be a potential? It's a rich owner.
Right.
This is a very wealthy owner. In-season coaching change.
It's also a patient owner. Shad Khan, the only time he's really pulled the plug was Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
And that was a completely untenable situation. So I don't know if they would do it in season, but to your point, if they lose this week, that'll be 10 straight losses with Trevor Lawrence at the helm. 10 straight. This is a team that has paid everybody. They paid Armstead, they paid Campbell, they paid Hines Allen, and they obviously paid Lawrence. They have a pretty good roster. Yeah. They probably should be 2-2 instead of 0-4.
Yeah.
They're going to London. That's their home away from home. Shad Khan loves it there. They play 2 games in London. Imagine if they're 0-5 going across the pond. At some point, you have to wonder how much longer Doug Pederson's going to be able to hold on. Now, I don't know if I wouldn't say he's on the hot seat right now, but to my point earlier about the locker room, you know, I've talked to players over the last couple weeks, not just the Texans game, that have told me this locker room doesn't really believe in the head coach anymore. Now, I don't have any ill will towards Doug Pederson. It's not like he forgot how to coach. He's won a Super Bowl. But what I can tell you is that when you come out and start blaming players the way that he did after the loss to the Texans, where they really blew that game, that's not the way to coach in today's day and age. You just don't do it. Right. It's not how guys respond. And I think to a degree, you take a 30,000-foot view and you wonder how much more losing they can take.
Well, Dave Wannstedt has said this for years. You can lose games, you can't lose the locker room. And when Wannstedt was in Miami and Chicago, and I mean, they were winning games. Go look at his record. He said, you lose 3 in a row in this league. If you don't have
support,
a big resume,
yeah,
right? Like, you lose players because everybody's hurt by week 4. Nobody's in a great mood. Winning solves a lot.
Yeah.
Like, this is you can go to an NBA season, maybe a guy's banged up. Everybody in your locker room is banged up week 4. Winning solves a lot of issues. They're not winning with Trevor, without him.
Yeah. You've asked me before, what's the biggest difference between covering the NBA and the NFL? Because I used to do hoops. One of the biggest differences, the NBA locker room is 12 guys. NFL locker room is 53 dudes. So you got a lot of different egos in there. Personalities. You need the respect of the locker room. That doesn't mean everyone has to like you. Doesn't mean everyone has to like each other.
Right.
But when you start turning on your players as the head coach,
publicly,
I recognize that as the beginning of the end. And I just don't know how much longer he's going to be able to withstand it. And eventually, he is going to be the scapegoat if they don't turn it around.
Can the Phillies? We've been talking. They're going to be great.
Yeah.
How good is that series?
I like that series.
You live right down there.
I do like that series. Mets, Phillies?
You're right around your neighborhood.
I love it.
Is the Eagles' season, I thought the first quarter, the first half. Against Tampa was
awful.
I don't think I remember a team that talented looking that unprepared. Is the season salvageable?
So I think it is, but there's a lot that has to be changed. First of all, when you don't have Devontae Smith and you don't have A.J. Brown, you're going to have issues.
Clearly.
Tampa's really tough at home. They have a really aggressive defensive. I mean, they were dialing up blitzes on 3rd and 20.
Well, that's Todd Bowles. That's him.
That's what he does, and they couldn't protect. I do think Jalen Hurts needs to be more decisive, but I think what really makes the Eagles great is the connection that he has with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, specifically Brown. His numbers are catastrophically different when he has A.J. Brown in the lineup.
No, that's his Christian McCaffrey in a different position.
100%.
They're literally a different team with A.J. Brown.
They are one of the most efficient offenses in football.
Practicing? He's going to play.
He's hopefully going to play this week. Devontae Smith should play. Okay. That's going to change a lot. Okay. They're 2-2. The New Orleans game, they got bailed out. 2-2 is about right where they're at right now. But they're 18th. That's the key stat for me. They're 18th in pre-snap motion. Now, that's Kellen Moore, who obviously was with the Chargers, was with the Cowboys. And I was talking to a GM about how do you go up against the Eagles? Like, how do you defend them? And he said, right now, they're a little bit predictable. And I said, so is that because of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith being out? He said, to a degree, but really it's the pre-snap motion. Kellen Moore is a really good offensive coordinator. I think once he gets all his arsenal in full effect, the way that Saquon's running the ball, right now he's the offensive player of the year, certainly the best running back in football.
Yeah.
They're going to be able to salvage it. The bigger question to me, though, is Nick Sirianni. Because if you're looking at the Eagles and you're saying, what's the big issue with them? Nick Sirianni's probably the face of it.
Yes.
Okay, so when things are going really well, you love Nick Sirianni. I want to get behind that guy. He's fun to play for. When they're not going well, you're saying, well, is this guy playing Madden? He's not taking field goals. He consistently goes for it on 4th and 4, 4th and 5. The math consistently tells you take the 3. He has a good kicker in Jake Elliott. I want to see Nick Sirianni take a step back and not put so much pressure on Jalen Hurts and that young offensive line to figure it out, because they do have a new center. The second-year guy, Jurgens, is going to be a good player, but without Jason Kelce, it's not the same 4th and 1, 4th and 2 offense.
Okay, finally, Rashee Rice. So they're going to have another test. Clearly, listen, their defense, Mahomes, Andy Reid, they're going to win a lot of games with or without Rashee Rice. Worthy is obviously a new over-the-top toy. They haven't had that in multiple years. They got a second tight end, Juju Smith-Schuster. Mm-hmm. So they're going to win games. The Rashee Rice situation to us, J-Mac, Ryan, we talked about this. Do they know?
So I think what's happened is that when you have the type of swelling that he had,
it's usually a bad sign.
It's a bad sign, but also you're not able to get the proper imaging. You need to take time.
Oh, okay.
So, and I'm not a doctor, but I've talked to a couple doctors, talked to some folks that have told me they need to let the swelling die down. And when that happens, then you can get the proper imaging. Now, usually when doctors tell you something's bad, it's probably bad. So I don't think the Chiefs are saying, I don't think it's realistic to say the Chiefs are going to have Rashee Rice back anytime soon, but they are doing their due diligence to make sure next week, I think it's going to be on Monday, to make sure that the knee is a torn ACL. If it's not, obviously, that's an unbelievable surprise. At some point, they will get Pacheco back. We still don't know about Hollywood Brown.
I think Pacheco's a little underrated.
He is, and he can catch the football.
Yes. I think we've talked about this. We talked Brock Purdy, 7th round. Pacheco is one of the best late-round players drafted in 5 years.
Was it 6th round, 7th round out of Rutgers? So
he's been a tremendous asset for a team that's trying to develop a receiving core. He is just a shockingly good late round player.
And let's give credit to I don't know how much time we have, but let's give credit to the Chiefs front office. I don't know if I've seen a team that has won back-to-back Super Bowls and is 4-0 get more disrespect. Oh, the Chiefs can't do it now. They're dead. Travis Kelce's too old. Brett Veach, I think, is the best GM in the NFL. They drafted Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback ever, arguably the best tight end ever, first or second best coach of all time, one of the great interior defensive linemen of our generation.
I mean, take out Aaron Donald.
Chris Jones is next.
I think he's next.
He is next. He's that dominant, and he's actually been better this year. I look at the Chiefs. I don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice, but I look at the Chiefs, and I say they are going to be in it when it matters. I picked them before the year, as you know, to win 3 in a row. I still think they're going to win 3 in a row because I believe so much.
If you told me Rashee Rice
yes.
will play at some point this year, I would take them to win it all.
So
without him, I just don't know if Worthy is a volume receiver.
Right.
Who's getting – I mean, Rashee was becoming 10 target night.
Number one guy.
Yeah, and it's – now, they can do it – again, they've done it without it. How many years in a row can you cobble together a receiving core and be the best team in the league? Because I think Buffalo's better this year.
Buffalo's really good despite what happened again. My question with Buffalo is how are they going to come when they're down, as you saw against Baltimore. Can Josh Allen that's why the Davante thing makes sense for them, because Josh Allen won't necessarily feel like he has to do it all as he did against Baltimore. It didn't work. But to your point against Kansas City, they can patchwork a running back with P. Ryan and Carson Steele. They can figure that out, Kareem Hunt. But they've lost Hollywood Brown. They've lost Rashee Rice. They've lost Pacheco. I think in order of most realistic or quickest to come back, it goes Pacheco, hopefully Hollywood Brown, and then we still don't really know about Rashee Rice. We'll find out early next week.
You said, Monday. Jordan, great stuff.
Thanks,
Jordan
Colin.
Schultz doing great stuff. He is on Speak later today.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.